Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 225. I'm NBZ, and I'm here, and I am still waiting, for Nintendo to give us some news about their own games. We're going to talk about some stuff that they talked about other people's games, but Nintendo consistently just not wanting to do anything about it at the moment. Bally, how are you feeling in this constant wait for what will be the actual Nintendo Direct to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to it, but it just feels a bit weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, feels a bit weird.
I'm doing okay. Me and Bally Jr., we went down to London. We got COVID. So that was fun.
That was a good adventure.
We met up.
I saw him again. Since the last time I saw him, grown tremendously. Definitely, sitting on my lap, the weight had increased, let's say, manyfold.
Oh, yeah. He's a right heifer.
He is a heifer, but a cute lad, and he's doing great. So, that was good. We met up in London, and that was a fun time. So
yeah, traveling back on a 5-6 hour train not feeling well is not recommended.
No, sounds pretty bad. And seems like you still have a bit of after effects. See, I've got coughing after effects from hay fever. You got coughing after effects from COVID. So, might have to do a bit of editing, chopping, and changing.
Just a bit of a tickly cough going on. It isn't backing down, but feeling a lot better.
That's good.
We were off for like a week of work.
Yeah, I mean, you've been, what do you call it, immunized 3 times, right?
Yeah, so, three jabs. But
still
I'll tell you what, feeling ill and then looking after a newborn baby.
Yeah,
it's not the same as feeling ill when you're not looking after.
When you just have to worry about yourself and just lie on the couch.
Yeah, it's basically still a full-time job. You just have to power through, even if you are missing work.
Yeah, man.
Tough.
Sounds exhausting. Certainly sounds exhausting. But
still played some games though.
Yeah, of course. No, you can't get away from that. And we'll be talking about some of that stuff today. So, Bally, do you want to tell the fine folks at home what today's show will look like?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about all the games we've been playing, and there are a lot. And for the second segment, we're going to talk about the Nintendo Direct Mini, which focused on third parties. But we're also going to maybe mention what on earth is Nintendo planning with the rest of 2022.
Of course, yeah. And I'll probably sneak in some chat about the Xenoblade 3 Direct.
Of course.
We didn't talk about that last time.
For nerds.
So, for nerds, only for nerds. Me included. So, Bally, let's kick things off with the video games, what we've been playing. There was a big drop. A game that has been long awaited on the Nintendo Switch, finally coming out. It's Fall Guys. Fall Guys had said for a long time, okay, we're going to be on Xbox, we're going to be on Switch, we're going to be on all these places, because it originally was just...
When did they announce that? It was like quite a while ago, right?
I believe it was like last E3, like a year ago, I want to say.
Roll out.
Their plan, I think, was to be around this time last year coming out, and then they just got delayed. And it seemed like part of the reason for that is they were basically rethinking the entire business model, because they've now come out, and not only is it everywhere, it's also free to play, it's also cross-play and cross-progression across all platforms. And I'm sure we'll get into that, but it feels like the future, man. It feels like this is what I need multiplayer games to be from now on, because it's really made a big difference. So yeah, Fall Guys came out. It's free. You can download it on any platform, and I've been playing it quite a lot, mainly on PC, but Switch I've put a good amount of time in as well. And maybe we'll start there with the Switch version of the game, because I've heard a lot of people talk some shit about this, and I don't think I necessarily agree with them, because a lot of people have said, oh, it runs terribly, it looks bad, all that sort of stuff. I actually really like the approach they've taken on Switch, which is basically what a lot of games have been doing recently. Pokemon Legends Arceus is a good example of it, where some of the Pokemon in the distance, because they're, it's a big open world, they can't render it fully, some of the Pokemon look like they're kind of stop motion with their animation, and basically what it is that they've just been set at an extremely low frame rate, but it's in a way that makes it look palatable as opposed to like janky. And the rest of the world, as you walk around, is like a solid 30 frames per second, but it's just when you see some of these characters in the distance, they're like a little bit like stop motion-y and animated. And that's basically what Fall Guys does for all the other characters, because look, you've got 60 players all at once online on this big map. If the Switch just feasibly isn't going to be able to run that all at 30 frames per second. It's just not going to be possible. So the decision they made to make all of these little bean guys animate at a lower frame rate, I actually think is a really smart way to do it, because the rest of the game feels really smooth, and you're able to kind of get through it and not have to worry about like big hitches and being messed up if some massive frame drop happens. I really like it, and it's been nice to like play it on my PC and then hop into bed, boot it up, and all my progress is there. All the stuff I've unlocked, all my costumes, all that stuff is there and ready to go, and I can continue, doing challenges and knocking stuff out on Switch in bed. It's really been a fun time so far, and yeah, I've enjoyed it greatly. And Bally, you've jumped in as well to Fall Guys.
Yeah, I've been playing on Series X, and Caroline saw me playing, and she was like, that looks really fun. Can I play it? And I was like, actually, why don't you just download it on your Switch, and we can actually play together, where I'm on the Series X on the TV, and she's just playing handheld on her Switch. And she was like, okay, right. So she made an account, and we played together, and we played like 3 games, and then Caroline won a crown on her 3rd game ever.
Amazing.
And I was like, what the hell? I've not won a crown yet.
Yeah.
And I've maybe done 15 to 20 rounds or so.
Okay.
But I'll get there. I'm having a good time with it so far, and it's definitely a lot more fun when we hop on Skype together and play some online MBZ. Yeah. But even single player, like it's really fun. It does feel like there's a lot of RNG involved, and obviously it matters what games you get and which games you're best at. But I don't need to take it overly seriously. Obviously, I want to win, and that's fun. But I'm like, my time will come. I will eventually win. It'll be fine. Don't worry. In the meantime, I'm just gonna enjoy these crazy games, and some of the games are much better than others. We can get to that. But it's a really nice package. I think it's manageable. There's still I don't know what to call it, but games like Apex Legends and Fall Guys and even Overwatch to a degree, it's like this almost online free-to-play model where the boot up screen just has to vomit icons in your face.
Oh yeah.
And for your single player gamers like me, I know EA hates me, but
it despises you.
For your single player gamers like me, it's very much like, what are all these things that this game? What are all these currencies? All these different screens? All these costumes? And you get used to it, and I think that you just need to learn how it all fits together. But I've been enjoying it a lot so far.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because this game is made by Mediatonic, who are a British developer, and there is obviously a lot of influence in this game is from stuff like Takeshi's Castle, right? And you can see that with one of the games, which is run towards these doors. Some of them will just be hard doors that you'll run your face into, and others will just be foam ones that you can break through, which is literally just a round from Takeshi's Castle, right?
Yeah.
And there's also obstacle courses, but there is a thing in British culture of the 80s and the 70s of these big game shows, like It's a Knockout, where all these people would get together in these big fields, and they'd have these giant obstacle courses of people running through them and doing these big challenges and things like that. So I do find it interesting that Mediatonic made this game, because there is a little bit of a history of this type of stuff happening in the UK. This type of competition, this kind of goofy, almost people falling over and doing clumsy stuff. There's that kind of similarity. So I feel like I recognize a lot of the types of obstacles that you would see, the big circular round cylindrical things that you run over, stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of Gladiators as well, that show that we used to watch back in the day.
Yeah, definitely.
So it has loads of those elements, which has been really fun to play through. And so far I have won 3 times in squad matches, which you kind of have different ways you can play. So squads are 4 players, so you're 4 people on a team, and based on where you go and how well you do, you get points for your whole team. There's duos, which I think we've played a little bit of duos, which is 2 people together, and then there's solos, which is everyone for themselves. But I think the really nice thing is that you can queue up with your friends in any of these modes, right? So if you and me wanted to do squads and get 2 random people in, that's totally viable. Also, if we wanted to do solos but still be playing at the same time, we could totally do that as well. And the first time that we did that, we both got to the final round, and I managed to win the crown. So Bally, I think what's happening is, you're just playing with other people and they're taking the crowns in the final round. You need to maybe go solo yourself, and maybe that's when your crown will come. But
it's also a really good spectator sport. So you think okay, well, if I get knocked out and I'm just watching MBZ, is that going to be boring? And obviously we got to the final round that time.
Yeah.
But other rounds where I've got knocked out earlier, it's still very entertaining to just like watch you or vice versa, you know, like it's a very fun spectator sport.
Like cheer each other on or just be like, oh no, you know, if you get knocked out. It's also, if you finish before someone else, you can watch the camera of them and what they're doing, so you can kind of follow them and, you know, watch along what they're doing. But yeah, are there any rounds that have stood out to you, good or bad, stuff that you, whenever it comes up, you're like, yes, or you're kind of like annoyed by?
Generally, I like the races get from point A to B.
Yeah.
And I've only done it once where the final round to get the crown has been one of those, and I really enjoyed that, like getting up a hill. I really dislike the collect this number of things one, where one of them's like hoop based, one of them was just like these little balls you have to collect.
The bubbles, right.
It's the first, I think sometimes it's like the first 15 people to collect 15 things or something, and it's just, I really dislike those ones. And we actually did a rhino one where you're just in a pen with 3 rhinos that are trying to headbutt you off the level, and it was actually quite fun. I know we both lost, but it was that one's quite good.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And I think there's a good variety of stuff going on in the game, right? Like,
yeah, there's a crazy amount of levels, actually.
Which is one of the benefits, I think, of jumping in like a year or 2 years after the game has come out, is that they've had a lot of time to like refine all the different stages and do different things. And even the ones that you do multiple times, there are different variations on them. So like sometimes they'll have hammers like swinging around at the end of one of them, or sometimes they'll have these big swinging balls that will go back and forth. So the obstacles, they actually kind of like swap them in and out for certain of the stages. But they also, obviously, doing this free-to-play launch, they've added a bunch of new stages, which I haven't been able to tell because I didn't play originally, so I don't know which are the new ones and which are not. I will say I do tend to get, at the beginning anyway, a lot of the same ones quite often. So like the racetrack one where you're running through, that one I've had so many times. And yeah, there are certain other ones like that will just pop up a lot more frequently, and there are certain ones where like I've played, I don't know, probably 50 rounds at this point, and I still see stuff that I've not seen before. It's just like I got to the final, and this was very close for me getting my second crown solo, was I got to a final round that's similar to what you were talking about, where it's like a kind of obstacle course. It was actually like a like that kind of temple game, the kids TV show, like I can't remember what it was called. There was like, they did challenges and then they'd go into a temple and have to collect the statues. It was like themed around that, but it was like the doors. So the doors that you could break through. And so there were multiple rooms you had to go through and see where the fake doors were and get past. And at the end, you had to bounce on bounce pads and then grab the crown. And I was ahead and I got to that point and I didn't realize I had to press RT to hold the crown. So I got there and I just didn't have any patience to do it, and I was like panicking because I was like the first person there. I was like, oh, what do I do, and I jumped and I fell down, and then someone else came behind me and jumped and got it.
I think there's a screen before that minigame that actually tells you need RT to
I think
get the crown, because I think that was a big criticism when the game originally came out, was people getting to like get the crown for the first time and then not realizing you have to like dive on it and dive on it, grab it.
Right. I mean, it kind of speaks to the idea that experience is very important in this game. Once you know what a course is, you generally will have a much easier time with it, because the first time through, you're just like, well, I've never seen any of this before. This is just instinct. I'm just kind of like going off blind assumption here. And once you have understood what the course wants you to do, and when you have kind of a good idea of, what obstacles you need to get past, it becomes a lot easier. So I know that next time I do that round, once I get to the end, I'll have a much better idea of like, okay, I know what to do here. I'm not panicking as much. I should be able to pull it off, hopefully. Obviously, there's still a lot of randomness and challenge in there. But I think that's the tricky part with some of the final rounds, is especially early on when we've not played that much. You get to a final round, you're like, I've never done this final round before. I don't really know what's going on. So you often will end up just dying quite quickly. And I think the final round where I won, when both of us were playing, I think it was the first time you had done it, and I'd done it maybe 4 times before. So by that point, I really knew what to do and what was going on, which meant I just had an easier time getting through it, basically. So, yeah, I think experience helps a great deal. But there are some rounds that are really random and annoying, like the volleyball round where you're against one other person.
I've only done it once, but I hate that one.
It sucks. Yeah, they basically drop this giant ball and you just basically have to jump. And because the physics of the jumping, right, I think it's fun and goofy. It's not like made for precision platforming though, right? Like
they've chosen a style and they've gone with it, and I respect them for that style, because I think it probably is easier to render the style of jumping they've gone for with like 60 players versus something that would be a lot more finely tuned, perhaps. It feels a bit clunky, a bit chunky, but it's manageable. I think it's predictable the way you jump, and you kind of get used to it.
You can also dive as well. You have that option as an additional thing.
I've been using the dive quite a lot. It gives you quite a lot of extra horizontal distance when you want to get onto a platform you're worried you're going to fall short on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool. I think people criticizing the platform mechanics, I get that, but I think the alternative would be even worse.
Yeah, and also, like, this entire game is built around this idea of goofiness and clumsiness, right? Like, the way that you fall over and your beans just kind of roll about.
There's a lot of slapstick comedy. Like, me and Caroline have been laughing really hard just watching randos fall off.
Right, yeah,
stage.
exactly.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, there's so much comedy to it, and I think that's kind of the point. And if you had something that was really, really tight and like precision based, it wouldn't have the same feel to it. Like, this has a margin of error to it that makes it exciting, and like the randomness is definitely like a part of it. I think it is fun to have that, but also, like, I think as people who are good at platformers, we have found ourselves having a much easier time. Like, I find myself, if I don't get screwed over early, I usually make it to the final round, and I think that's because we just have a good like level of platforming intelligence or just like aptitude that we're able to do that stuff. It feels like, and I was talking to maybe you about this, someone else, about like when playing Apex Legends, we just feel so out of our depth in a way that like my skill ceiling is never going to get as good as those people who will win all the time, right? Just because I didn't grow up with shooters, I'm not amazing at them. I have fun with those types of games, but I know that I'll never reach those heights. So when I die, I'm just like, yeah, I guess so. When I die in Fall Guys, I'm cursing up a storm because I know that I'm better than this shit, because I'm good at platformers, right? This is my genre, this is what I grew up on. I know I should be able to do better. And so, you know, when I'm doing bad in Fall Guys, I'm just like, fuck, I fucked up. That was my fault. My bad. Yeah, it feels like what it feels like to be someone who's good at a battle royale game, which is interesting. But yeah, I think that overall it's a really fun game that I can see myself playing for a long time, and part of that is that they fucking got me with the battle pass, Bally. They did. I usually am.
I was shocked, but I mean, using II and Gata Roboto to get you over that line was perhaps even more shocking. So deep cuts there.
So they basically, in the store, right, they have these costumes that rotate in and out, and the first fucking costumes they have are II from Monkey Ball and the cat robot from Gata Roboto, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Like, that is the deepest cut possible. Also, like, 100% targeting me and my bullshit, and of course I want to be the one person who's a Gata Roboto fan playing Fall Guys. I've not seen anyone else with that costume, by the way, just to put that out there. No one else is paying
their... know what it is.
Exactly, no one, they're like, what is this weird cat thing? Where I'm like, I'm a nerd, I know that I played that game, it's good. So yeah, I basically bought like the 16 quid, a bunch of chips or whatever.
If Gata Roboto's there, we're definitely going to get the Gumbrella person.
Oh shit, you're right, that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, I bought like the 16 quid worth of chips or whatever to get in all the currencies, and then I bought the II costume, the Gata Roboto costume, and the battle pass. But the nice thing about the battle pass is you can actually, once you've paid for the battle pass, you can get enough chips that will pay for the next one. So I'll basically be able to have 950 by the time the next battle pass rolls around. So if I want to buy the next battle pass, if I'm still playing Fall Guys, I can just do that. But also my mentality here is that usually with these types of games, I go hard on them for like a short period of time at the beginning when I start playing them, and then I don't come back to them that often. And because I'm very into this at the moment, I thought, well, I might as well just do this now while I'm enjoying it, while I'm having, you know, a lot of time put into it, to kind of get the most out of it. Because I've in the past there's been like, well, I played Apex a bunch at the start and I didn't get the battle pass, and now it doesn't feel like I'm ever going to do that again. Doesn't feel like I'm going to commit to it again. So I thought, you know, if I'm going to commit once and do it, I might as well try and do it now. And I'm like level 37 on the battle pass now, and it's 100 levels, and I think I can do it. I think I can finish it up.
I think I might decide to save my battle pass virginity for Overwatch.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, know. That's going to get me 100%, so I don't really have a choice in that matter. I will do that. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, really loving Fall Guys. I think it's great and it's fantastic. again, I just think, the idea that you and Caroline in the same room, one of you on Switch, one of you on the TV on Xbox.
It's great. Really cool.
And you can just play together online. Like, this is the future that I want to see for all these games, like be it Rocket League or Fortnite or whatever. I think Epic has definitely got behind this in a big way, because obviously they own Psyonix now, so they own Rocket League and they own Fall Guys and Fortnite, like all three of those games, and all of them have the similar kind of setup of cross-play, cross-progression, all that stuff. It's it's the future. I want to see all multiplayer games lean into it, so let's see if that happens. But Bally, you have been playing something that you've been meaning to check out for a long time, but most expensive game on the eShop that shouldn't be that priced.
Yeah, it's normally £27, I want to say. That's Kaze and the Wild Masks.
Yeah.
And you messaged me saying, Bally, it's finally on sale. And it was like a hefty chunk.
It was like much more reasonable than it ever is.
Yeah, it went down to $8.99 in British pounds. So
yeah. And we've been annoyed by this, because on Steam this game is literally half the price than it is on console, and it's absurd. But yeah, finally it's a reasonable price, and
maybe it's unfair to judge game prices based on like length and how much you enjoy them, because I had a really great time with this game, and maybe therefore it is justified that it should be £30-40.
Sure.
But you get to a point where indies they should be a certain price, and maybe that's wrong to say that, but you just feel like most indies on Switch, like once you're paying over 20 for an indie, you're just a bit like, oh, it better be a damn good one now at this price. But I am pleased to say Kaze and the Wild Masks, it's a fantastic game, and this game could not be any more Donkey Kong Country if it tried.
Yeah.
And I mean that on every level. So, for example, there are 3 things that you can collect in every level. They are the Kaze letters, which are just like the Kong letters.
4 of them, in fact.
Yep, 4 of them, in fact. You've also got 2 bonus levels per level. And you've got purple, it's like a purple coin currency or whatever it's called. It's basically bananas.
Right.
And those are the 3 collectibles per stage. Now, the difference between this game and Donkey Kong, the original Donkey Kong Country games, is I think this game is considerably easier than those. I also think it's easier than a game like Tropical Freeze, but it's maybe on a level with like a Donkey Kong Country Returns, I want to say.
Okay. Yeah.
I do think this game would be very easy if you were just playing to beat it. So just getting through each level, get to the final boss, and finish the game. I think it's quite an easy game, especially if you're semi good at 2D platformers, which we are. I think it's quite a simple game in that case, which is why I decided I wanted to 100% this game. I wanted to collect every single banana equivalent, all the Kaze letters, and complete all the bonus levels, which I think it is worth doing in this game. I think it's kind of like that 3D world, 3D land level of like, right, this game is quite simple if you don't collect those things, so you might as well collect those things. Like, it feels like it is part of the main game.
I think it's a good way to do 100% stuff, because it almost tricks you into doing it by means of saying this is the more interesting thing to do, versus a lot of games where collectibles are just a little bit annoying and not fun to do, and I think it kind of gets around that problem, which is cool.
Yeah, and every time you like do all the collectibles for a world, you unlock a secret level, just like Donkey Kong.
Right.
And those levels are very challenging. I say very challenging. I still don't think it's anywhere near like Celeste levels of difficult, but it's good.
Yeah, I mean, is the one that you posted to Twitter one of those secret levels? Because that one was definitely had like a lot of stuff to it.
No, so that I need to get to the masks. So I think there are 4 masks. You've got dragon, bird, shark, and tiger, and they're basically the 4 masks that Kaze can wear. And these masks aren't like you can't like put them on, take them off at any time. They're just like given, they're literal checkpoints within levels. You have to wear the mask during this period of the level, and it's basically like the animals from Donkey Kong Country. The shark is just like the water mechanics from Tropical Freeze. Right. The dragon is cool because it turns the game into like an auto runner level, a bit like the carts, in
minecart stuff.
Minecarts, right? So you got the dragon, and I really enjoyed those dragon levels. Actually, there's maybe not enough of them in the game, but yeah, it becomes an auto runner. And what's cool is that the dragon has like a double jump, but then it also has like this other move where it very rapidly goes down, like on the screen,
dives towards like
dives down, and you need that to like dodge out the way of enemies often and things like that. So it's really well done. And then the other 2 are a tiger. The tiger's like, you can climb and you can like do a dash, and that's about it.
Okay.
And then the flying bird is basically you can fly. It's the same mechanics as the bird from Donkey Kong Country, where you're just like repeatedly tapping jump to gain elevation and releasing the button to decline in elevation. So the masks are cool. I think they add variety to the game. They are so Donkey Kong Country, it's ridiculous. They're another way in which the game is just like completely copying that.
Yeah.
And yet the story and all that stuff, I can take it or leave it. Kaze themselves is like this bunny rabbit thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I do think the Donkey Kong Country games do a better job of like fleshing out like, who is the big bad? Why are we even here? I mean, all this stuff obviously doesn't matter. It's
no,
a 2D
yeah, of
platformer,
course. They stole his bananas. Oh no, let's go get them.
But even in a game like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, although the story is just silly and zany, I do think the world building is obviously one of the strengths of that game, and the way that the world links to the actual levels, and the way that those levels, you know, like this is the juicing level and everything's juice and all this fruit is flying around the place, you're jumping on fruit, and it all links a bit more, whereas this game, it's very clear like this is a platformer, and yes,
the levels just feel like random like blocks in space and stuff like that
most of the time. Thematically some of the stuff is better. The enemies in the game are vegetables and fruit, and I don't really understand why. They're basically,
I guess because you're a rabbit and you eat carrots, maybe something like that.
Maybe. But it's just it's a bit strange in that sense, and that's fine. I think that's not what this game is about. And
sounds like the platforming is just very tight, right? Like it has. Really does it have that kind of heavy feel to it as well?
Yeah, I think you feel a bit lighter than DK, and like Kaze kind of has like Diddy Kong's glide in there as well. So Kaze's
the bunny
ears, the bunny ears spin, and then you can glide down. So like it really is DK in as many ways as possible, which is pretty funny, to be honest. I think it's, if you like those Donkey Kong Country games, and so I think the original trilogy, I've not played the third game of the trilogy, but the first two games, especially the second game, I think is just brutally difficult in a lot of bad ways, whereas I think Tropical Freeze is brutally difficult in a really fun way.
100%,
And so if you are, you know, Tropical Freeze was a long time ago, to be honest, at this point in time. So if you're craving that like Donkey Kong Country itch, I cannot recommend this game highly enough. And if you think those previous Donkey Kong Country games, the trilogy, are like a bit archaic and a bit bullshit, then I think this game like irons out all the bullshit. Like this is a very fair game that is very clean.
It's got good like checkpointing and stuff like that.
Good checkpointing. There's like an easy mode that increases the number of checkpoints I didn't dabble with. So every level has like 1 or 2 checkpoints. Another great thing this game does is when you're going for collectibles, you can collect the collectibles and then exit the level, and you will keep the collectible, as it were. Like I can go to a bonus level within a level, and then rather than finish the level, I can just come back out of the level once I've done the bonus level, and it will count. So like stuff like that just makes 100%ing the game a lot easier. So the boss fights, I will say, I will warn people, they are like Tropical Freeze, where it is a dance. It is very much like you can't beat this boss any faster than the boss will do its next animation.
Right, they have specific windows where you can do damage to them, stuff like that.
There's a window you can do damage, and that window is not changeable. You can't just do damage early on. And I actually think it works better for this game because it's more open about the fact that this is a platforming challenge, whereas I think what's frustrating about Tropical Freeze is the fights almost set themselves up where they look like you can actually take out the boss more quickly, but in effect, in reality, you can't. Whereas this game is like, we're going to throw in like platforms, and the boss is going to jump around the screen like mad, and you can't actually, there's no actual chance of you even getting the boss if you wanted to. And then it's like, all right, now the boss is exposed, we'll do the damage, and we'll do the same dance again, and rinse and repeat. And there's about 4 or 5 boss fights. I think there's a secret boss fight. I mean, I did do everything, so maybe I did do the secret one, or maybe the secret boss fight is extended, or I don't really understand how that unlocks. But yeah, Kaze and the Wild Masks, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I think that for a lot of listeners who I assume will be big platforming fans, because we are a Nintendo podcast, like this is where 2D platforming's at, and I think it came out a couple of years ago, last year. And I
think it was something like that.
Last year, and I've forgotten the name of the developer. I believe it's their first game.
Oh wow, okay,
and
it's impressive.
Yeah, I I think they're European somewhere, and
Awesome.
I think this is a fantastic game. And I've not played a good old 2D platform in a little bit, so yeah.
Awesome.
Recommend.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out at some point. I missed the sale. I forgot to pick it up, but I will definitely keep an eye out again. And I definitely want to try that because sounds like a lot of fun, especially when you posted that video to Twitter of that auto run section. I was like, ooh, yeah, this looks like a thing I want to do, right? Like it has that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah. So. It's a good level of difficulty. Some of those levels are pretty challenging, but in a very good way.
Satisfying, yeah. Sure. Cool. Well, I've been playing another relatively recent release, one that has done extremely well, and one that I was like somewhat interested in because of last, I think in 2020 probably, was Streets of Rage 4 that I played, which you'll know on this show if you listened for a while that Bally and I don't really like beat 'em ups that much. I guess we kind of grew up with them to some degree, like the Jackie Chan game on GBA was one of my favorite games back in the day, but
don't forget Revenge of the Sith tie-in game on DS.
Of course, yeah, no, everyone's favorite. But yeah, we didn't really grow up with stuff like Streets of Rage and like that kind of side-scrolling beat 'em up. Although we've kind of got into stuff like Contra, which I would say was adjacent to those games, but a little bit different.
We did a bit of Super Punch Patrol.
Yes, yeah, we played that. But really, Streets of Rage 4 was the first one where I was like, ooh, this feels good. Like, it looks really nice and modern. The animation style is amazing, and it just felt so much better than any of those previous games. And so, recently released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge came out, which is for a lot of people like going to hit a big nostalgia bone, because these games, there were a lot of Turtles games back in the day, both in the arcade and on home consoles, that were side-scrolling beat-em-ups that people loved.
I've definitely played one of the arcade games, like when I was in the States at some point. We were in some arcade and definitely got through a good few levels. I don't know which turtle I played as, but yeah. It was good fun.
I don't. Do you grow up at all with the Turtles? I feel like they were on TV a bit, but I don't remember watching it that much.
I think they're a really good example of the age bracket that's just a little bit older than us.
Yeah.
Like I think we're all about the Pokemon, Harry Potter. But
yeah.
I feel like it's the age bracket just a little bit higher than us, and I'd maybe even argue more American than the UK, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely, I feel like I hear about the Turtles from Americans far more than I hear from people who grew up here.
I think they're having a renaissance now because Nickelodeon have done like loads of new shows.
Totally. But yeah, stuff like Turtles in Time was a big deal for people back in the day, that people loved playing, and so a lot of anticipation for this release. I believe it's made by Tribute, who've made a bunch of stuff before, and it's fucking fantastic. Like, I think on a gameplay level, this is actually even better than Streets of Rage 4.
Wow.
I personally think that the kind of style and animation of Streets of Rage is slightly superior. Like, I really like the hand-drawn aesthetic. This one is much more pixel art. It's much more kind of 16-bit inspired, but even more detailed.
I've heard people say it looks a lot more like a Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
definitely very comparable to that Jackie Chan game, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that game. Looking back on that game now is pretty ugly, to be honest with you. And that game,
it looked so good at the time.
Yeah, that game has almost more rotoscoped characters that were like cell shaded 3D almost.
You need to get that on your Ambernick.
I already have. I've played it on there. Yeah, that's why I have such a current recollection of it, because I played it probably a few weeks ago. So yeah, but this is really good pixel art. Like, I mean, the quality of the animation is outstanding. But yeah, I'd say I probably have a slight preference.
Who's your turtle?
So I played through with Leonardo, who is the sword-wielding dude. So you've got, I think Donatello has the staff. I think Raphael has these like kind of not knives, but like, I don't know how to describe them. They're like three-pronged. They're like mini...
Yeah, they're three-pronged.
Mini like Poseidon, mini tridents, yeah. And Michelangelo has the nunchucks. And so I went with Leonardo because he was like the most... he was the Mario, basically. He was the most balanced in terms of his stats. And... man, this game feels good to play. You know how in side-scrolling beat-em-ups, you can't really dodge out of the way easily, and you just basically have to awkwardly walk away from people to move out of their vision? Here, you can just dodge roll. You can just dodge roll around people. And even if you get hit and you tap the button, you do like a super dodge roll where it like kind of gets you out of danger so you don't get stuck in animations and get destroyed by people. And that has made it feel so much more playable, because I'm just like jab, 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 dodge roll to the side, jab, 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 like do an uppercut. Like, it feels so much more smooth and fluid. I wouldn't say like a fighting game, but just like in a way that you would want a modern beat 'em up to feel, which has has like a lot of options to it. Like you can forward tap to dash, and then you can either press the attack button to like dash into them and do a big hit, or you can press the A button and you'll slide into their knees basically below and do kind of like a low attack. And it just feels so great to go through all these enemies and like learn their patterns and get out of the way. And I mainly played it on the easier difficulty because generally with these games I don't like playing them on harder difficulties because I've had issues in the past where it just gets too brutal.
We could do that if we do co-op, maybe go harder.
I think so, yeah. I definitely want to play it on normal if we played co-op, and that's a great thing as well. This has online co-op, also I believe cross-play between platforms, so if you're on Switch you can play with someone who's on Xbox or on PC. It's an awesome thing that, you know, just continues to be something I want more and more in the future of the industry. But yeah, I had a great time with it, and it only took probably 2.5 hours to blast through the campaign. But each level has a different aesthetic to it, different style. Some of the levels do stuff like, you know, you're on a kind of hoverboard, and you're kind of moving around as you know, bikes come towards you on a bridge and stuff like that. Yeah, there's levels where you're kind of like flying through, and it switches it up enough to make it feel fresh every time. But the other thing is you're leveling up your turtle or your character as you go through. I've actually gone through and tested out all the other characters just to see how they play, and I think Leonardo is still probably my favorite. I really like April O'Neil is her name, I don't know, the lady who's with them. She's like a reporter, and so she has a microphone that she uses to hit people with, and she has like a spin attack that spins around this giant microphone as well. She's very fast, and I really like that because it just allows you to get out of the way of stuff and get quick hits in, but a little less powerful, but still like played very, very smoothly. And yeah, I could see why people would continue to play this over and over again, because even after I played it that one time, I just sat through and played it in one sitting, I came back to it the other day and was like, yeah, this just feels good to play. Like, there's something about it that is inherently like snappy and, you know, satisfying, and the punches feel good, and you get stuff like where you're bouncing people off the side of the screen and kind of doing air juggles and things like that. There's a lot going on, and it feels well balanced in terms of throughout the areas you'll have random pizzas that drop will fill your health back up to full. So like when you're getting low and you know you need one, there's usually always one right when you need it, which is great to see. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of character to all the enemies and stuff. Like, you'll walk up on some dudes and they're just like sitting there licking ice lollies, or there are a couple of guys who are just like playing Game Boys. Like, they all have these little characteristics to them, these little like bits of charm that make it all stand out. And all the boss fights are pretty fun as well. You also have like super moves, so you have a special that you can build up by doing your regular combo. So any hit you do will build up the special meter, and then when you use the special, you can use it in a variety of different ways and different moves that you unlock. So there's one that's a ground one, and each character has a different one as well, so it's a good variety there. And the one that I had for Leonardo was in the air, so if you jump and then use it in the air, he comes like crashing down like a meteor, and it's really good for like area of effect stuff. So if you have a lot of characters on screen, you can clean them out really easily. And yeah, like as I said, I think mobility is definitely the word I would use here for like comparing this to other beat 'em ups. You feel so much more nimble and able to get around, and so like from running to dodge rolling to even being able to jump and double jump as well, it just feels like such a refined experience that I wasn't expecting necessarily, because I knew people love these games, and I haven't really played any of those old ones, so I don't know if they're actually taking this stuff from those games. But this is what I want from beat 'em ups, right? Like, if you're not going to give me a block button, right, which none of these games really have, give me a way to get out of the way, because that was my biggest frustration with Streets of Rage 4, was like, okay, well, I got hit and I couldn't really move out of the way except for slowly like lumbering myself off screen, like out of the way of this character, and just having that dodge just gives you such much easier mobility to get around. So yeah, I think it's really, really fantastic, and I would 100% be down to co-op with you online. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, we should get to that before the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's really short as well. Again, only a couple of hours, so yeah, you can blast through it with ease. I've also seen Giant Bomb played with 6 people at once, because it allows 6 players, and that seems like full chaos. Like, Jesus Christ, everything was just exploding and popping off, and yeah, it seems maybe a little too much. It feels like probably 4 players is a good balance for it, but I think playing 2 players would be good as well. So yeah. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. It's obviously you can get it on Switch, but it's also on Game Pass. So yeah, if you are someone who isn't really into this genre but maybe is interested, I would say, give it a look and check it out. So yeah, that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge.
Who is Shredder? Shredder, the dude. With
He's the bad guy. Yeah, I think
metal
he's
ninja mask something.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. I always thought Shredder was the rat guy, but I think he's Splinter. I think is what he is.
Yeah, there we go.
So they sound too similar. You can play as Splinter. He's one of the characters. You unlock Casey Jones, who I don't know who that is, but he's a guy with a hockey stick and a mask, and yeah, he just hits people with a hockey stick basically. So that's fun. But yeah, Splinter's pretty good. Splinter's a fun character to play as. And yeah, as I said, I went back in and just went through 5 more levels just to try out the other characters. And yeah, I think Donatello's probably one of my other favorite turtles. He has a bow staff, and so he has a lot of range, which is really helpful because it means you can stay away a little bit further. In there. Yeah, Bally, you would play as Donatello, I think. That's your character. 100%.
Turtle. Yes. I can turtle in this game.
Exactly. You can literally be a turtle and turtle as much as you want. Yeah.
I was also going to say, I think the thing that was big for our generation, which is a bit more similar to TMNT, is probably Power Rangers. That was definitely more our generation.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true. Man, are they going to make a Power Rangers beat 'em up? That'd be cool.
I think they have. I think they've had a varying success with Power Rangers games.
Probably, yeah. Doesn't feel like an IP that's come back in the same way.
Not quite.
The Turtles have, but
I think they've tried.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, let's move on to another classic style action game, but one that is a bit more modern and one that we've been waiting for a long time. Cuphead is back, Bally. Finally, after watch almost 5 years, over 5 years at this point.
They turned around the Horizon sequel in a quicker time than this DLC.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. But we're back with Cuphead, the delicious last course.
It really is delicious.
It's tasty, so man. It's tasty. So obviously you played Cuphead a few years ago, I think, on Switch, when it came out on Switch.
Yeah, I played it when it came out in 2017, I think. Did it not come out in 2017?
I think it did. It came out on... I played it originally when it came out in 2017 on PC. You played it, I think, in 2018 or 2019 when it came to Switch, basically.
I thought it came to Switch in 2017.
No, it didn't. No, the original game came out in 2017. It didn't come to Switch until a bit later, a couple of years later. Because you were in Japan playing it, right?
I was in Japan for the second time, you're right. So
yes.
It must have been 2019, actually, I played it.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, so here's the thing. I remember giving Cuphead my number 2 game of the year behind Breath of the Wild. And oftentimes I've looked back on that and have thought, well, I put it above Mario Odyssey, I put it above Hollow Knight, I put it above like Metroid Samus Returns. Did I really think Cuphead was that good? I don't know. I've had like second thoughts about it. And playing the delicious last course, Bally, has made me realize, no, I was fucking right. I was absolutely 100% correct. Cuphead is one of the best games ever made. Like, it is just absolutely fucking fantastic. And this DLC has solidified that in my brain, and I should smack my old self for thinking that I was stupid for putting it at number 2 on that list, because it deserves
dislike of Mario Odyssey, but we can get.
Well, I don't have a dislike of Mario Odyssey. I think Mario Odyssey is very good. I think it's incredibly good. It was my number 3 game that year, right? Like, I think it's exceptionally good. But yeah, I maybe I just don't praise it as highly as some other games. But yeah, I totally agree with my old self now. It should have been up there and deserves to be up there. And this is currently up there for my current games of the year with the delicious last course. So what this is basically a whole new island, which involves a bunch of new boss fights and some extra additional challenges. So there are no platforming levels in this one. However, they've added a kind of challenge section of the game where you go up this ladder and you find this king character, and he has like 5 challenges for you, and they're all based around platforming and parrying your opponents. So there's no gun usage, you can't use any weapons, you can't use any of your charms, nothing to boost you, and you basically have to do these challenges where you dodge out the way of stuff and parry stuff to win. And it is incredibly fun. Like, I find those levels really, really satisfying, and a great compromise, I think, for not having to do like full-blown platforming levels, because as much as I like the platforming levels in Cuphead, they're not like the main reason I was there. And I think
they for me, they felt like a massive step down from like the bosses and these actual side bonus levels in this DLC. I think I could take or leave. I think there was a couple of platforming levels I didn't even do in the original game. I just did the bosses.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, totally. And I do think that they found a way to do platforming stuff in more of a boss style that actually makes a lot more sense, right?
Yeah, it's nice.
Which is really good. So I finished the whole thing at this point, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I have, because I think it was only 4 hours or so it took me to get through it, and I just wish there was more. But realizing how long it took to make this in the first place, it's like, man, that's just, it's a tough thing, and I totally get it though, because looking at the way these bosses are designed,
it's so intricate, and the animation is like unparalleled. Like it's just so unbelievably detailed, and there's so many. Every boss has so much energy, and they are constantly moving. There's so many moving parts that like nothing is ever stagnant, and you really realize there's a whole lot of like machinery going on under the surface of like how this all operates, because all these things have their own hitboxes and animations and weapons, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, even more impressive than the animation stuff, which is just staggeringly good, is how tight and perfect every single piece of the design feels, right? Like, you can go into one of these bosses, get your ass kicked, and then, like, over the course of an hour or whatever, slowly figure it out, learn every single pattern, know every single move. By the point at the end, you are dodging literally everything and not getting hit, because it is so well designed that every like window of opportunity that you have to either dodge something or like see something coming, it's so well balanced. Like it's impeccable in a way that is really hard to put into words, that the thought and level design and like how long it would have taken to just get this feeling so pitch perfect. I think that's honestly the thing with Cuphead has always been like you get in the door with the animation, but what keeps you there is just how incredibly well designed the bosses are. And that just is in peak form here, because they are some of the best ones in the game, I think. Especially the first flying one that I did with the cow is I had trouble with some of those flying levels in the original game. Like the robot one I remember being a pain in the ass and like probably one of the weakest designed ones from a kind of fairness perspective. Whereas this one was just like, okay, it's hard, it's very challenging. It goes through these amazing phases of like the cow turning into a bunch of like sausage meat and like rolling around and like these cans and things. Like talking about context, right? Cuphead in context is like on parallel with DK Tropical Freeze.
Every phase feels so different from the previous one. They take wild turns and twists. You're like, wow, okay, right now we're doing this thing that I didn't expect we were going to be doing. And,
it's so delightful when like fighting that giant and like you're fighting him in his first phase, you get past it, and he basically rips his beard off, and you realize his beard was like stuck to the ground on the platform you're standing on. Like amazing shit like that. And the first time you see it, you're like, whoa. And then like you go to different places, like the end of that fight, you like end up in his gullet, like he just swallows you whole, and it's like just so surprising and delightful in that way.
You're fighting his uvula in the end.
Yeah, literally. Crazy. I don't know how you felt so far, but for me, I've definitely been leaning on the homing gun for most of these ones. And I think the reason for that is a lot of them feel far more platforming focused than previous ones have, which means that like there's harder windows for you to just stand still and get your aim correct to shoot them. Because what I actually did at the end of the original game was I was using the charge gun a lot, which gets through bosses quite quickly because every punch of it does a lot of damage. But here it felt like even if I was using the charge gun, I would probably still take around the same amount of time as I did with the homing one, just because like the windows of opportunity to use it are a lot less. So yeah, I kind of have been crutching on that a lot so far.
I have the homing gun and the charge gun both set, and I find that because they're not like a lot of these bosses tend to take up large parts of the screen, and because it's so platforming focused, you're spending a lot of time facing away from the boss. So all the time that you're spending facing away from the boss, you're more likely to want to use the homing gun, because it'll curve around and hit the boss. On top of the fact that I think these bosses, perhaps more so than some of the earlier bosses, a lot of their projectiles are destroyable, or you can be destroyed, and it means that you want to use that homing gun because you will destroy the small projectiles that might hit you. Because I thought, right, I've really learnt the phases of this boss now. Why don't I try the charge gun, and then I'll be able to just take it out more quickly, because I've learnt this boss. I don't need to home in necessarily. I'll just use the charge gun. And I found myself getting hit so much more by these extra projectiles, because but while using the homing gun, it was taking out all the projectiles along the way. So it was just like a much cleaner way of managing the enemies in the bullet hell on screen. Really, was using the homing gun.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I definitely found that with that frost giant fight in the first phase, where there are these little fucking gnomes who jump up and try and hit you with a hammer, or they spawn below and they start like doing annoying stuff. With the homing gun, you just automatically, without even really thinking about it, get rid of them, and so you can focus on just dodging out the way of all the other stuff coming your way. And in the second phase of that with the puppets, like they're jumping from the ground and like getting in the air and being a little bit annoying, and the homing gun again takes care of them mid-flight, which is, yeah, again, you don't really think about it when you're doing it, but once you switch to another gun, you're like, I see what's happening here. I kind of actually just need to go back to the homing gun, which I think, honestly, I like that about this DLC, because as people who generally are more platforming focused than like Contra kind of gun shooting focused, I think this has a heavier balance towards the platforming stuff than the other way around, if you know what I mean. Because you are just dodging out of the way a lot and stuff like that, and
there's way fewer platforms that are safe to just stand on. Like, I think a lot of the earlier bosses in the main game, there's a lot of safe zones to stand in, but the boss itself will, fire more at you. Whereas this DLC feels a lot more like there's a lot more survival and platforming, as you say, and less so purely the boss throwing crap at you. There's a lot more. There's fewer windows, and it makes it easier to use the homing gun, I guess. But
totally,
it feels like a slightly different balance in a good way.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that those parrying levels as well, like, lean into it even more. To take this to a place where I think it is almost elevated above the main game. I don't think I hated any of the bosses in this. Like, I loved every single boss. I found, like, some of the elements, like, a little bit tricky or frustrating, but Cuphead has that thing of, you will never find a move in a boss fight that is undodgeable or feels impossible to do or impossible to move out the way of.
It might initially, but you can work every move out, you're right.
Right, and there's like a level of animation, like we were just talking before we started recording about, there's this horse knight character who you fight in one of the parry challenges, and he has lots of moves that are tricky to dodge. However, every time he does one, there is a specific tell of what that specific move he is about to do will be, and it can be a small window, but it's big enough to where you can know what he's going to do and get out of the way in time in order to get through it. And that, like, slow learning, that slow kind of pattern recognition, I remember doing it when I was streaming the original game back in 2017, and I remember fighting this train boss, and I started the stream just like nowhere, like had no idea what to do. It was a mess, it was a nightmare, and by the end you can just see that evolution of just like, okay, this means it's going to do this means it's going to do that, I know this, and then I can react to it. It's such a satisfying curve that you go through to learn these fights and get better at them. It's incredible.
I need to replay the main game, to be honest. It's
yeah,
just so good. And I was saying this over a message, but this, like, the ability to see how far along you are with each stage every time you die is very, very satisfying. It's just like, oh, I was so close, but next time I'll get like, it's a very satisfying loop. It feels very unique to this game, just like, right, you've died, here's how close you were to defeating the boss.
Yeah, and I think it's really crucial, because I think if you had a health bar, it would eliminate a lot of the tension that Cuphead builds, right? Because especially at the end, like, they always make the last phase a little bit longer than you think it should last for, and I wonder if they're doing anything in the background to make that happen, just to, like, toy with the numbers slightly, just to give you that tiny squeeze at the end,
It's so interesting, because I can't think of another game. Obviously, you can think of tons of games with, like, a health bar for bosses, but I can't think of a game where when you die, it reveals the health bar.
Right, yeah.
That's essentially what you're looking at the end, is a health bar.
Pretty much, yeah.
But, like, you think of, like, Mario fights, Zelda fights without a health bar. It's normally, like, a 5 or 7 hits, or 3, 5, 7 hits often. But even if you die, it won't tell you how many more hits the boss takes. Often the final phase, the boss will go very red or something. But in this game, like, it's like a really unique take on that idea that we're going to do a health bar, but it's invisible, and then we'll reveal it when you die. Like, it's a very clever mechanic.
I will say I did have to rebind my controls again because I think the default controls for Cuphead are just bad. I don't like where they put dash. I don't like where they put like having jump on the bottom button and then attack on the left button on no matter what controller you're using. That's always what I'll go for is jump and shoot.
You don't use the trigger for shooting?
I don't, no. I use the top shoulder buttons, the not the triggers, the bumpers. I use those for standing in place on the left and dashing on the right. So I have dash on the right bumper, which for me it just feels a lot more natural and easy to use.
What button is standing in place?
The L bumper on the left hand side.
And was it that makes your character stand in place and you can aim the gun?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I've not even been using that at all.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the natural key binding is for it because
Right.
I changed them up to suit my preference. But I remember having to do that when Cuphead first came out because I just don't think the default control scheme is good. I just don't enjoy using it. So yeah, I had to do a bit of that. But you know, once you got that set up and you know what you're doing, it's all good. There is a secret boss fight, a final boss fight that you can find that is somewhat different. I wouldn't say it's like similar to the others. It's
the
more
hardest?
It took me probably 40 minutes or so. It's pretty challenging, a bit of a gauntlet to some degree, and it has a unique thing about it that you have to figure out what you need to do.
I think that flying cow one took me like at least an hour and a half.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. No, I think I've been going through. I went through the main bosses in about 3 hours total. So
that's very quick, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Which is why I was a little bummed out. I was like, I wanted this to last longer. I should have died more.
I'm definitely already on about 3 or 4 hours, and I've done like three of them.
Okay, cool.
4 of them.
I mean, honestly, I wish I was you because I wanted to keep playing it more. But yeah, I would say that final secret boss fight, you don't necessarily have to go out after it. But yeah, I think it was fun to go and do that. I'd say check it out at least because it's somewhat different, does a different thing. But yeah, that's Cuphead, the delicious last course. And my God, is it tasty?
Is it ever going to come back? Is this the last course forever?
Man, they should make a Cuphead too.
What if they say like the Cuphead, the extra dessert?
Yeah, you know what? I would take it even if it takes another 5 years. And to be fair to them, they've been very good about like, you know, people ask them about like, oh, this has taken so long, and I think someone from the studio was like, who cares? We're not going to crunch people. We're going to like make this under humane conditions and like make it properly. So respect for that, 100%. But you know, they want to do a sequel. If they want to do Cuphead 2, I'm here for it. So do that, please. That'd be nice. All right, well, the last thing I want to talk about is a demo that dropped, which I'm sure we'll talk about during the Nintendo Direct Mini, for Live Alive. In the vein of Square Enix doing demos for all of their video games, they have decided to do one more, and it's for this game coming out quite soon in July. It's coming out a week before Xenoblade 3, Bally. Like, do they know RPG fans? What are they doing with themselves? It's mainly Nintendo's fault.
How's your progress on Elden Ring cross Xenoblade 3 cross Live Alive gonna happen?
I mean, here's the thing. I am getting close with Elden Ring. I'm there, baby. I'm like,
okay.
right, I'm 94 hours in. Like, I'm hitting the line where I'm gonna finish it off. I did just fuck something up in Elden Ring, which will lock me into an ending that I don't want. So I'm gonna have to go on a little bit of a quest to undo that at the moment. But aside from that, everything is a-okay. It's going good. But yeah, I think it's mainly Nintendo's fault for bringing Xenoblade 3 ahead of schedule. They're like, nah, we're gonna do this in July instead of September. So that was smart. Thanks, Nintendo. But yeah, Live Alive, a game that, if you don't know, and I didn't before they re-announced it, was it is a classic RPG from the Super Nintendo era that only ever came out in Japan, has never been translated into the West before, and now for the first time is being brought over in their 2D HD style, which is fantastic, and I just want them to do this with every single one of their old games. Square Enix, just get on it. Make Chrono Trigger in this style, make Final Fantasy VI in this style, do it with everything. It will be amazing. And it really is the prototype, or I guess it's probably the inspiration for what Octopath Traveler became, because the idea behind this story is you are in a bunch of different storylines. So like there are different eras of time in which this takes place, and you basically play through separate, I think 8 or 9 separate stories.
Different characters in every timeline.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's like there's a Wild West one, there's one in the future, there's one in the super distant future, there's one in the prehistoric past, there's one in like this certain era of China, the certain era of Japan.
Have you played Chrono Trigger?
Yeah, totally. It kind of has a bit of that vibe to it, but I think the interesting part is you're not one party of characters going through time. You are these individuals within their own time period.
Is it like Chrono Trigger cross Octopath Traveler?
Yeah, kind of. But also, like, it's reminding me a little bit of 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, which is that visual novel from a couple of years ago that I played, that follows a bunch of different storylines, a bunch of different characters, and you can kind of jump between their stories whenever you want. And it will kind of lock you out of different stories in that game, but you can be like, oh, I want to do this person for however long, and then I'll jump to this person, and you kind of get this narrative out of order almost, but then it all comes together in the end. And I think this is slightly different because it feels like they're all very disconnected, but in the end, I believe they're all going to come together and form into one thing. So the demo is basically 3 different chapters, 3 different sections that you can play, and they're all really different. So the first one I jumped into was the Edo era Japan, which is you are this ninja, and you have been tasked with assassinating this dude, and you kind of go into this castle. This is huge kind of like sprawling castle area, this dungeon almost, and you're exploring around, you're fighting enemies, you're finding chests and all that sort of stuff, and it looks amazing. Like, it has that 2D HD style, but it feels like it relies a bit more on the 3D elements. It feels a lot more like there's a lot more depth to it, especially because you're going inside this castle. It feels a lot less like left to right, kind of like the same way that Octopath was, and in some ways Triangle Strategy was. It's much more, you have a lot bigger kind of environments to go around, and each section has its own mechanic. So being the ninja in this section, you can press the Y button and he will kind of disappear. It's really funny the way they do it is they almost make it look like the pixel art itself is hiding him, like he's hiding behind like a little bit of cover with a little bit of kind of the corner tearing off of it, but it looks like he basically blends into the pixel art itself. So it's a really cool look that they've gone in terms of doing that. And every time you fight an enemy and kill them, afterwards he says lives taken, and it ticks up the number of lives taken. So I don't know what that is referring to, if it's going to have any impact of like me killing everyone within this castle is going to mean something, or if I went through not killing anybody, if that would have an effect.
Do you think you'll find out in the demo, or is that going to link?
No, so it's weird because this portion of the demo actually kind of ended a bit prematurely for me because I hadn't fully explored all the castle stuff I was going to. I just went into a door, and then after I went into the door, it was like, anyway, that's the end of this part of the demo. I was like, wait, what? Okay, that was a little bit weird, but it will let me pick up from that point when I get the full game, basically. So I can go back, I think, and explore other parts of the castle that I missed. But yeah, already at the beginning, it was a lot to kind of go around, and it's interesting because if I wonder if I hadn't attacked anybody, if I just stayed hidden the whole time, I wouldn't have been leveling up, which is weird. So I don't know what that kind of impact that has, and what kind of this the mechanics of this specific story are going to be. But the combat is really interesting because it's kind of grid based. So you will have this kind of 10 by 10 grid, maybe it's 12 by 12, and an enemy will be somewhere and you'll be somewhere, and every time you move, a meter will tick up. So like it will tick up a little bit below you, and the enemies will also tick up. And once it's full, basically like an ATB meter, then you can do an attack. And these attacks have different ranges to them. There's ones where you can be right next to the enemy and just do a regular sword attack. Some of them are like, there's this giant fire blast move that it's like a 5x5 grid around you, so you can catch multiple enemies in it at once, and it does a bunch of damage. Enemies are resistant to certain types of damage, they're vulnerable to certain types of damage, but it doesn't seem like there's any magic meter or mana bar or anything. And you start off with like 4 or 5 different moves. It's a little overwhelming to be honest, of like, you just kind of start this RPG and suddenly you just have access to all this powerful shit straight off the bat. It's really weird. So I kind of just kept using the most powerful moves all the time, and I wasn't...
Is there a chance it's like the start of Final Fantasy VI where they take it away from you again, or...?
I don't know, because every story does this, so I'm guessing that it's just a consistent thing that it's just the way the game works.
It's a really unique battle system. It sounds very strange.
It's really interesting though, and I like that it has positional stuff, like the Imperial China one. You play as this kind of old ancient monk dude, and his entire story is he wants to train the next generation. Like, he doesn't have any disciples anymore, and he lives on this high kind of mountain area, and he's training, and he's like, I'm going to probably die soon. I need to pass on my knowledge to the next generation. So his story involves you exploring these different towns and finding proteges. So you find 3 disciples to train, and then you get all of them in your party, and then that kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, you can have 4 people maximum, I think, in a party, and so you can fight with all of them on the battlefield at once, and you can switch to them by just pressing, there's an action called pass, so you can pass your turn to them so that they can act first, and then it will change the order, basically. So and each of those characters has a bunch of different moves to them as well, and it feels like, yeah, they just kind of give you a lot straight out of the bat, but it also feels kind of narratively relevant because the Imperial China, like the monk guy, he starts off at level 10, and all of his students start off at like level 2, level 3, and there are moments in that story where, like, at the end of it, he's fighting them to train them, and it almost feels like you know those fights you have in video games where you fight against this invincible boss that you're not supposed to beat and you can't beat? It feels like you're that boss fighting against these students because they're like fucking weak sauce compared to you, and you're just like owning them. And it's a really interesting inversion of that idea of like you being the super powerful dude, kind of training these people up. It's really cool. So I wonder what's going to happen with that story. That one felt much more narrative focused. It feels like separate kind of focuses here. So like I think that I know why they chose these stories, because the first one is far more action based. There's a little bit of narrative set up at the beginning saying, okay, you're a ninja, go to this castle, kill this dude, but most of that is exploring, finding treasure chests, fighting enemies. The Imperial China one feels like a balance of you are going into the forest, you fight some tigers, which is pretty cool, but mainly it's about like finding these disciples, learning their moves, and having a little bit of story context for them. There's a little mini side quest where you go and collect a bunch of herbs to heal some villagers, and then the third one practically has no combat in it. The third one is the distant future, and you play as this robot, this little robot guy, this character, and you have been created by one of the members of this ship. So it's this ship that is floating through space that is going to a destination, so you're just on a spaceship basically the entire time. And you wake up the characters from cryosleep. So you go to their section where they've been, put into stasis, and you awaken them all. And they all come out of there and they just start having conversations and stuff. And it feels almost more like a visual novel, where it's like almost a Star Trek thing, where you're seeing the relationships between these characters and seeing what happens and the tensions between them and what's going to break down. And there's a lot of just talking and stuff. And then there's a section where you go into this meeting room and a dude is playing at a computer. And I was like, oh, is this a fun mini game in here? And the game on the computer is the combat system. So it's like it's a space-inspired version of the combat system where you're playing this character called like Captain Planet or something like that, and you just go and fight a bunch of robots, but it's treated as a video game within the world of this section of the game. So like if you want to do the combat, you can go and play that little game, but I think for the most part, unless I haven't actually finished the Distant Future, that's the only one I haven't finished yet, but I don't know if I'm actually going to fight with the robot at all. Maybe it will just be all this kind of narrative stuff happening on the ship. And one of the nice things about this game, I think, in terms of the voice acting, is it's not all American. It's all kind of varied depending on where you are. Like when you're in the Japanese era, you have people speaking English but with Japanese accents, and in China, same thing, Chinese accents. And also when you get to the Distant Future, it's a bunch of different people from all over the world. So there's an Australian lady, there's a British dude, there's an American dude, there's an Indian dude. Like it's really cool seeing that kind of like differentiation, because usually in games like this you just get, oh, we're just going to do all American actors, but in this game they've really thought about it, and I'm sure that's because of the nature of it, right? Because in like the Western cowboy setting, you want them to have those types of accents, and in all these different eras of the world, you want to have them match up so it feels like a globe-trotting adventure, basically, which is really, really cool. And I'm absolutely loving it so far. It just feels so fresh and different.
Does it chop up the chapters like Octopath, or how does the story go back from, say you're in the Chinese area and then you go to another area and then you come back to the Chinese area later, or is it all wrapped up?
So I don't know how they're going to handle it in the final game. Basically what happens here is you'll play through one section, and so like the Imperial China one, I played it all the way until a point where it pops up a message saying, hey, this is the end of the demo, come back and you'll be able to continue from this point. So I think what you can do is
you went to another demo.
Yeah, then you basically go back to the main menu where you can just switch between the 3 different scenarios that you can play within the demo.
Okay, so there are 3 different scenarios within the game at different points.
basically there's a menu that you go to, which is select which story you want to do. So you can select a story and then you can hop into it, and I'm guessing you can just save that story, you can jump back to that menu and you can jump into a different one. So if I wanted to, I could have saved midway through the China one, jumped back to the Japan one and played that for a bit, and then jumped out and jumped back. So you can kind of do it at your own free will.
That makes it even more confusing, because they said that this can continue into the main game if you
it just means like the rest of that particular story, right? So you get to a stopping point with each of them, and they say there's no more content here for you right now. But when you get to the main game, so when I start the main game, if I wanted to, I could ignore all of these stories and I could just jump into a brand new one if I wanted to, right? So what I imagine is that you'll be able to play through. For example, if I just started this up and I just played through the entire Imperial China story, I think the game would let me do that. So just let me play through all of that, get to the end of it, and then I imagine there's probably something that locks me off, because what I've heard is that this game then kind of combines everyone together. So it probably puts me to the point before that, and then I can play another story and get all the way through that story.
So it's almost like Octopath, if you could play chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 of a single character before moving on to another character.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. They're all very separated because they're all in different places and eras and all that sort of stuff. So yeah,
it's very intriguing. I like this.
Yeah, definitely check it out. I think you'll get a lot out of it, and it's really interesting. It's really well written and voice acted as well. Like I think that's the biggest benefit of doing these kind of remakes is, in the Super Nintendo days, if this had come out, it probably would have had a really janky localization and like been interesting and cool. But I think them getting to do it from the ground up now and like doing it with modern sensibilities and being able to, write it in a way that makes sense and have the voice acting accompany it, it's really, really good. So I'm very into it so far. A second HD 2D game of the year. Square Enix kind of hitting out of the park right now. So I'm looking forward to it. I just don't know when, if I'll get to play it. I think, because I've taken a week off to play Xenoblade 3. So that's my focus. That's what I'm going to be mainly playing. But I do want to play as much of this as I can. And I think it's a bit shorter. It seems like I looked at how long to beat. And the original Super Nintendo game, it says about 18 and a half hours for main story. So for an RPG, it's like Chrono Trigger length. It's actually very, very digestible. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing
check out this demo.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I like the battle system.
I think you'll find it interesting. I found the most difficult part was in the ninja section, because that's where most of the fights are. And there was one part where I was fighting 5 people at once. Definitely was an optional area to get like some treasure chests that I didn't need to do, but I found that was probably the hardest part of the battle system. I died like a few times there, and then I left it, and I was like, I'll probably come back here later if I'm leveled up more.
The checkpointing good.
Oh, really good. Yeah, it will auto-save you before every room you enter, stuff like that. But you can also save wherever you want. So, yeah, super streamlined. Very, very easy to get into. So, yeah, obviously Live Alive demos out there, and all of this carries over to the full game. So if you play through all the stories, when you start the full game, you can just pick up from wherever you were in all of those, which is really good. So, yeah, I'm going to finish up the Distant Future one and then look forward to end of this month coming out, Live Alive. So there you go. All right, that is going to do us for this part of the show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break to talk about Nintendo Direct Mini, Xenoblade Direct for Nerds, and whatever the hell Nintendo are doing with the rest of 2022. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the second part of the show. It's time to talk about Nintendo giving us a Direct. Yeah, that's the one we were waiting for, right, Bally? It's the Nintendo Direct for the summer. It's a mini partner showcase. So just as many caveats on the end of that sentence as possible from Nintendo. So yeah, I think this was rumored from Alana Pierce saying there was going to be a direct on the 29th. And then there was the Xenoblade direct that happened before that, and then people were like, well, does this mean there's not going to be a direct? And then there was more credible rumors, and then I think VGC said, well, it's going to be a thing, but it's going to be a mini, it's not going to be a main one. And on the 28th, a mini happened, and stuff happened within it.
Just remind me of the release date of Xenoblade.
It's the 29th of July.
29th, okay.
Yeah, so end of this month. Which I don't know if that reads into any potential of when one will happen.
We can get to theories in a bit, but we can cover this direct mini first, I guess.
Yeah, so there was a few things in here that were pretty cool. I would say overall it was fine. I don't think it was an amazing direct or anything. There was some cool, obviously, announcements of things coming to the Switch that haven't been there before. I think probably the biggest one to start off with is the one they closed with, which is the one that everyone's been waiting for years and years for. It was weird because there was
Xbox stole the limelight on.
There was the Xbox event that happened, and they announced Persona 3, 4, and 5 are all coming to Switch. I'm sorry, not to Switch, to Xbox. And everyone was like, wait a second, why have they only done Xbox? That doesn't make sense for Atlas, especially. Like, Atlas are a Japanese company. They're very much probably not wanting to just have it on Xbox, and it wasn't even announced for PlayStation at that point. I think Xbox had a weird like exclusivity window on the announcement for some reason, but then it was announced for PS5, and then I was like, well, this is stupid. Why is the console where it's going to sell the best not announced for? Turns out because Nintendo wanted to do it their own way with their own thing, and they ended up doing it. And so Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, and Persona 5 Royal all coming to Switch. Bally, tell me how you feel about it. Is this the time that you play a Persona game?
It probably is, but seeing as they're coming to Game Pass, I might just go for that. But I don't know how much they'll be on Switch, because Switch would be a good console to play them on.
The tricky thing for Game Pass for me with these games is they are fucking long RPGs. So there is a risk of playing them and them disappearing and you being 72 hours in and then it being like, no, it's going off.
And it's not like you can transfer your data to the Switch version in that scenario, which is quite worrying.
But also they're RPGs, which means portable is just, for me personally anyway, I just much prefer that, right? Like I played 4 Golden on my Vita, I played 3 on my Vita as well, because I got the PSP version of 3, which is portable, which is the one they're putting out here, and then 5 I did play on PS4, but I would have preferred to have 5 portable because that game took me 90 hours to play through, so it definitely is more feasible. And the nice thing is that it's the enhanced version of 4 and 5, so Golden is the one they made for Vita, which has all additional stuff. 5 is the Royal version, which came out a few years after the original and has a lot more stuff in it, stuff that I want to see and experience at some point. So I might replay 5. I definitely want to replay 4. 4 is one of my favorite games of all time. And 3, I wish they would remake 3 properly. 3 is one of those games that is kind of compromised no matter what way you go. There's Persona 3 FES, which is the kind of best PS2 version of the game that has... It's more in line in terms of like exploring the world and stuff like that. You have the 3D camera and things, but you don't have certain elements, like you can't control your party members, and it doesn't have like the female protagonist option from 3 Portable, whereas 3 Portable has all that extra stuff. You can control your party members, but it plays more like a point-and-click adventure, so it's like a bit more disconnected. It doesn't feel like... You don't feel as connected to the characters in the world, which is a real shame, and I think that's part of the reason why I didn't love 3 as much as 4 and 5. So I think 3 needs a more ground-up remake, if I'm honest. If people want to check out 3 in the portable version, I think it's totally fine, and you'll probably have an okay time with it, but it's by far the one that has aged the poorest, even if the story is still really great and the characters are still really great. My recommendation is 4 and 5 are definitely the ones that people want to be paying attention to here. And 4 is I think 4 is incredible. It's just one of my favorite games ever. I do think
I'd like to try 4. Will they be one pack together, or buy them individually?
I think they're all individual because they've announced that 5 is coming out on October and the other 2 are just coming soon at the moment. So they're going to, look, Atlas are going to get your $60 regardless for each of these. That's how it's going to go. So, yeah, although 4 was pretty cheap on Steam. When they put 4 on Steam, it was about $20, so it was a decent price. It might be a bit cheaper for those older games because they are much older, versus 5 Royal being a relatively modern game. I think they are probably going to do full price for that one. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I definitely want to play 4 and 5 again. They're 2 of my favorite games ever. So, high up my list. Bally, is there anything here that you wanted to chat about that you thought was cool?
I am looking forward to playing Portal as part of the Portal Companion Collection. This was obviously announced, I think it was earlier this year, and then they dropped it as part of this direct. So looking forward to pick that up. And it's a very reasonable price. I think you said it was like £13.99, £13.50.
Yeah.
It's good to see. It's on Switch. I can't believe I've never played Portal, but I need to play Portal.
It was weirdly absent from like a lot of kind of modern day consoles because it came out in the 360 era. So PS3 is where I played Portal 2, and subsequently I got a PC and I played Portal 1 on PC. But yeah, it's weird. Valve has a weird relationship with consoles, and sometimes they put stuff out, sometimes they just kind of sit there and do nothing, which is a lot of why people are mad at them, because they just basically just make hats and Dota these days and don't do a lot of actual development on games. But it's great it's coming out and finding a new audience, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who, growing up hadn't played a Portal game, had heard about them, and definitely a good way to jump in. And Portal 2's a fantastic game. Portal 1 I think is impeccable in terms of it's really tight. It's like 3 hours long, but is some of the best 3 hours you'll have playing a game. It's just really, really, really well done. And because they are relatively old, they shouldn't have any trouble running on Switch. Like they are of a generation that is kind of in the same power level as the Switch.
Do you think they can run at 60?
I don't know. I haven't actually heard any stuff about the current versions. They're out there, so people are downloading and playing them. So I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look that up. But I think they'll probably be quite good. So we'll see how that goes. I was surprised to see Nier Automata show up here. It's one of those games that I think over the years I've made predictions multiple times of like, okay, well, what third-party games can come to Switch? And Nier Automata has always been on that list for me of like, yeah, this probably should be on Switch. I don't know if it'll run okay because
is it native or cloud?
It's native, yeah. It's a native version. So it ran pretty poorly on PS4, if I'm honest. Like, it had frame rate issues on that console, which doesn't bode well for Switch. But I don't know. I mean, the thing with Nier Automata is you look at the game and it kind of looks like it could be a PS3 game. Not to say it's ugly, but like the environments in that game are not kind of up to snuff with what you would expect from the PS4 generation. So in some senses, I was like, yeah, well, it probably could run on Switch. But yeah, I don't know. They're probably going to have to pull some tricks off to make it at least somewhat smooth and good. But I don't know. Yeah, it's a great game. It's worth playing. Definitely a really good one to look out for. But I'd probably be wary about that version to see how it runs, because it's potentially not great. But we'll find out. I'm sure that will be good for a lot of people. Bally, anything else you want to pick out?
Nothing that interesting. I mean, I think Mario Rabbids coming October 20th. It's looking good.
Mm-hmm.
I think Live Alive obviously looks great. You've played that demo you talked about earlier. I want to also play that demo. I think Sonic Frontiers was looking just kind of
really bad, actually.
Yeah.
Sonic Frontiers was, in fact, a lot worse than I thought it would be, because I've seen a lot of footage of that game, mainly running on other consoles, but it looks like you don't want to play this game on Switch. It looks incredibly poor, like muddy and ugly, low frame rate. Like I
actually thought it looked quite pretty on the original reveal. I don't know if it was running on PS5 or Xbox or whatever, but the original reveal a few weeks ago looked quite nice, I thought.
Yeah, it looked okay. I think that game has a lot of issues in the first place, and then being on Switch is just gonna amplify those problems. So yeah, I'm a little worried about that. What do you think about Blanc? This kind of like animal adventure co-op game that looks pretty cool.
I've completely forgotten what it looks like.
It was it's a deer and a like little fox, I think, working together. It's like a black and white style but 3D. Like it's a kind of a co-op adventure where you kind of are helping. Each character is helping each other out, kind of get through environmental puzzles and stuff like that. It looks really delightful. Like has a very kind of wholesome aesthetic to it, but also it has that thing of like one of them's gonna die at the end. It's got that kind of it's going to be tragic and emotional and all that stuff. And calling it Blanc and having that kind of like I think the logo has both of them kind of curled up next to each other as the C for the logo is definitely portending something bad happening. I think it kind of reminded me of Brothers. Like if you were going to play this through single player, I imagine you're going to be switching between the two animals to do these puzzles together. So yeah, I wonder if it has a bit of that vibe to it. But yeah, it looks very, very delightful and cool, and that definitely stood out to me from these games. Yeah, I was also interested. Square Enix has a couple of things here. Harvestella was one of the final announcements, which was it's like a Stardew style game from Square Enix, where they have, a bit of kind of dungeon crawling, a bit of farming. Seems like the kind of budget you would expect this game to get from Square Enix, which is like not very high, not very low, somewhere kind of weirdly in the middle, and looks okay, like very anime inspired, as you kind of expect from them. But has a cool vibe to it, and I think there's a lot of popularity in the indie space these days with farming style games. Like, you see so many all over the place, and even there are a couple of here, right? Because you had Doraemon. The new story of seasons coming out. There's also Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is kind of do you have any thoughts on that, Bally, as a Disney fan? This weird thing that is like Animal Crossing like.
We saw this somewhere else like a month or two ago, and it just looks like Disney trying to get into like the farming market, I guess, in some way. It looks bad. I don't know what to say about it. I just think it just doesn't appeal to me in the slightest.
Interesting. Yeah, it feels like it's going to be free to play as well, so that's questionable.
I'd rather play that Disney driving game whenever that comes.
Yes. Yeah. That, I don't know. Well, Disney are doing weird stuff with games. At least at this point with the Star Wars stuff, it feels like they're actually going to different companies as opposed to EA and making deals there. So hopefully we'll get some good stuff from that. And that, I think the thing I want them to do most is just work with indie developers and be like, hey, here's Marvel, here's Star Wars, go crazy, make a platformer, make something weird like a turn-based RPG. Go wild with it. That's what I want to see. But I don't know. Yeah. Disney are doing their own thing. They got the money to spend, so we'll see. The other one I think that stood out to me is just like, oh, that's cool for a lot of people and surprising, is the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, which the Mega Man Battle Network games were huge back in the GBA era. They kind of did the Pokemon thing where they were like, we're going to do 2 versions of this because it seemed like Game Freak was making a ton of money, so other companies kind of jumped on the bandwagon as well. And I've heard some good things about Battle Network and the way that it has this weird kind of tile-based combat, and there are a few indie games that have kind of been inspired by it and have done quite well.
Is it action or turn-based?
It's turn-based, I believe. Yeah, I think it's turn-based, but it uses tiles and maybe like pseudo card mechanics. I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. But I remember Elo back in the day. He was a big Mega Man Battle Network fan and played a bunch of those games. So there's a big fan base for that. So that's very cool to see. And just seeing more GBA collections is what I want to have happen at this point in time. Unless Nintendo's going to go out there and do the GBA stuff, we're just going to see a lot more of these companies just doing their own thing. And Capcom have seen a lot of good success with their collection so far for the old Mega Man games, the Mega Man X collections, original Mega Man games, so it only is natural that, they go here and they do this. I would not be surprised if they do the Mega Man ZX, Mega Man Z kind of GBA collections, those things. Those are also, there are a lot of those. They made a lot of fucking Mega Man games back in the day. A lot, so they can do a few more collections out of these, and I wouldn't be surprised. The other collection, or the other remake that was a bit interesting, one you messaged me about, being like, have I played this before? I feel like I've seen this, was the Pac-Man World Repack Edition.
What a name.
Yeah.
Repack.
Yeah. What do you recall about this, Bally? Because I think we played this at a friend's house back in the day.
See, I had thought it was your house. You thought it was a friend's house, but it is just like that kind of... It's just like a very standard 3D platformer for the time, and to us at the time it was like, wow, this is like on a par with Mario. But looking back, obviously it's not in the slightest. But
no,
I mean, that was my first. I think that's the first time I ever saw Pac-Man. Was
really?
He had like arms and legs. Yeah, I
big ass Pac-Man. Wow.
Even back then, I don't think I was aware of like the traditional Pac-Man arcade style Pac-Man and the arm and leg Pac-Man, which I guess we now see in Super Smash Brothers. This might have been the first outing of that Pac-Man, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching this be played, or at least playing it a little bit myself at friends' houses, and I did think, oh, this was fun. Like, I enjoyed it back when I played it, but it kind of like, it's one of those things that leaves your brain space, and then this gets announced, and you're like, wait a second, I've seen that before. So yeah, I don't know. Pac-Man seems like a character who they didn't really know what to do with during this era of video games, and so they did weird stuff like this, and I don't know. I'm interested in it. If it's cheap, I might pick it up one day, but probably just going to leave it in obscurity in my nostalgic memory of what the hell that thing was back in the day. But yeah, I think overall this mini direct was generally fine. It had things for certain fans, like there was an update on Monster Hunter, which is now out.
Monkey Island is quite a big deal for
it is
a certain group of people, not
totally.
including me. But
yeah, which a lot of people were being assholes on the internet about that art style, and Ron Gilbert was like, I'm leaving the internet because people suck, and that's terrible. It really sucks. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big point-and-click adventure fan, so I'm not really that interested in Monkey Island, but people are reverent for that game. Like they talk about it in very, very high regards. So I might be one that I check out at some point. The only other thing was RPG Time, that kind of sketchbook game, which looked like, you're kind of being drawn in a notebook style, this character going on an RPG adventure. I remember seeing that a few years ago and thinking it looked really cool. And yeah, I think that's out relatively soon as well. So we'll see how that is. But yeah, not a huge amount else, which leaves us wondering, like, what is going on here, right? Like, when will Nintendo actually do something and announce something else? Obviously, we talked a bit about Xenoblade and that having its own kind of marketing cycle with the Direct happening, and that game's coming out end of July. So there's a window here. Just to quickly touch on the Xenoblade 3 stuff, I watched that. I was, I thought it could potentially have spoilers in it, but generally I think it was quite good with that stuff. It didn't lean into it too much, and it still feels like a lot is left to explore and find out about the game. But a few things that I thought were notable from it. A lot of focus on the battle system. It talks about you can switch party members mid-fight, which is the first time you've been able to do that in a Xenoblade game, which is cool. And I think it ties into the idea that, so you remember in the first Xenoblade Bally, you have the arts palette, which is the kind of the line where you have all your arts lined up in a row. That was like a okay way of doing it, but it was a little bit cumbersome because you have to go left and right on your D-pad to like access all the arts, and it just wasn't as instant. Like if you wanted to do something quickly, you couldn't really do it. Xenoblade 2 introduced a much more streamlined system where each face button corresponded to using an art. So like X would be one and Y would be one. All the face buttons would correspond. So they've kept that system, but because it's a little more simplified with each character, they now let you switch between characters. So you can switch to your healer when you need to heal. You can switch to your tank when you need to draw aggro and all that sort of stuff. So it makes it feel a bit more active generally. And I think it gives you access just a lot more arts overall, because it means if everyone has 4 and you're switching between 6 party members, that's a lot of fucking stuff that you can do in a battle. So it feels a lot more streamlined in that way, which is cool. And there's all the stuff coming back, stuff like gem crafting from the first game is in here. The affinity chart is back, so doing all those side quests. It feels like there's a lot more focus on like character interactions, which is nice. Like you can sit by the fire and do like conversations with characters. I'm imagining they'll bring heart to hearts back, which is great. The thing that Future Connected did that was quite nice is that they had voice acted heart to hearts, which usually in the original games all the heart to hearts were just like text based and the characters didn't talk during them. So now I imagine that they'll do a bit more voice acting for those, which would be nice. Yeah, I just kind of like the party members that we have so far, and I'm really interested to see the journey they go on. So yeah, having more kind of party interaction stuff sounds good to me. I'm interested in that. They also showed off the Ouroboros, which is the kind of robot forms that they can, when they kind of merge together, they almost do like a Pacific Rim style thing where they both kind of become one and control a robot. They can now switch form basically depending on who's in charge. So if Senna, who's like the lady with a big hammer, if she's in charge, the form of that Ouroboros changes dependent on if she's the one who's taking control versus Lance, who's the other character, and it kind of switches and you can switch between them. This feels like the main, I want to say gimmick of the game, but like the main kind of interesting different mechanical thing for combat that they've got going on, which is basically just a big powerful form that does a bunch of damage. And I'm sure they'll get in more into the nitty gritty of like how combat actually works in terms of fighting enemies and doing damage to them, because Xenoblade 2 had a system of like building up certain meters with these kind of orbs that would circle around enemies, and you would smash the orbs in order to do big damage. It was like a very specific way of doing combat that was really satisfying, probably my favorite combat system in an RPG, but also fighting regular enemies like would take ages if you didn't understand it. So it definitely takes a little bit of getting used to and understanding. So I wonder if they streamline that here and make it a little bit more accessible and easy. And the other thing they mainly focused on was classes. So you can switch classes between every party member, and they showed a bunch of examples of like, here's everyone in the party wearing Noah's jacket, so they all look the same. They're all like, it's all like they're part of some boy band or something rolling out all in this red jacket. So you can switch any party member to any other class, and that gives them access to different arts that they wouldn't have otherwise. So it's a lot of mixing and matching. So it feels like they're taking inspiration from, like, you know, classic Final Fantasy games where you're switching job classes all the time. Even Octopath did some of that stuff, right, where you're taking job classes and you're getting different abilities from them, and then you're kind of using them as other job classes in order to kind of have a kind of customized party that you can kind of, you know, change and mold to your will. And you also have like a 7th party member, so these hero characters who come in, and they have different classes that you can get access to, and you can use those on your characters as well. So it feels like a lot of customization on that end of things. I'm not sure how I feel about it fully. I think if they implement class systems well, I can really get attached to them. Like Dragon Quest VII is a great example of a class system that I really enjoyed and got a lot of satisfaction out of kind of getting all of those sorted. But I don't know how this one will feel. It feels a new thing for the series in any case, which is good. But yeah, it's looking great. This is my most anticipated game for this year by far. I took a week off of work to play it, so yes, I am excited to play Xenoblade 3 at the end of this month, and so yeah, looking forward to that. But Bally, let's talk about what Nintendo could do for the rest of the year potentially, because there's rumors floating around. There's kind of like ideas of what will happen. Supposedly, according to Jeff Grubb, Bayonetta 3 is coming out this year in October, and they need to talk about it. So like they have to have a direct at some point in order to do that. Or do they? Do you believe this idea of them doing like specific game-based directs and then doing other random announcements here and there for when things are going to happen? What are your thoughts on how they're going to handle things?
I think you can probably argue they can just about piece that together if they wanted to. So you might have like a Splatoon 3 direct, you might have a Bayonetta 3 direct, but I think they probably just about have enough where it would make more sense to stick it all together in one direct. And I also think that you've got stuff like we're due the next wave of Mario Kart tracks. Jeff Grubb's also been rumoring like this Metroid Prime remaster, remake, whatever it is. So like I think, and you know, there might be Game Boy Advance games coming to Switch Online or something like that.
Right, it's around September, isn't it, when they have to get people to pay for another year of the Switch Online. So they always have to have something to motivate people to do that, right?
So I think I would be fairly confident there will be a substantial Nintendo first party direct either July or August, and I think that'll tie into a shadow drop of the next Mario Kart wave. July was meant like estimated to be when the next wave would probably be if you extrapolate their 2-year plan over like the segments, as it were. Yeah. So I'm still fairly confident there'd be one in July. What holds me back from July is that they still have Xenoblade coming out end of July. So yeah, rather than have another direct where they mention Xenoblade, which is still possible, that's something they have done in the past where a game's about to come out and they just give it one more flash in a direct. So July or August, and I think we see Metroid Prime Remaster, Bayonetta 3, Splatoon 3. I think it's also a good slot if they are going to release Advance Wars Reboot Camp this year. I think that's a good slot for that to be mentioned. And then if they're feeling really good, it finishes with like a 10-minute long play of like Breath of the Wild 2. Like that's kind of where I can see that happening in July or August, maybe even as late as September, but I think they're bumping up into too many release dates if they wanted to do it as late as September. So I'd be confident July, August, they've got too much to say. And if we don't get any Breath of the Wild 2 this year, I think we can count spring 2023 out. I feel like that I presume there is substantial gameplay for that game they will want to show off at some point, and this year, this summer, this autumn seems like the right time. I'd be surprised if they release that game without showing us substantial gameplay first.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, a couple of points there. I think on the idea of showing Xenoblade again, I don't think they're above it, because looking at the Nintendo Direct Mini that we just watched, they had Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes in there. That game was already out by the time they did this Direct Mini. So again, this was supposed to be I guess it is technically a partner showcase, because even though the IP is owned by Nintendo, the company is Tecmo Koei who's working on it, so technically they're a third party. So I guess that's...
It's like Mario plus Rabbids, like it's a Ubisoft game, but it's got Nintendo characters in it, I guess. Yeah. Although I believe Ubisoft publishes the Mario and Rabbids games, which is really interesting. That it's not actually Nintendo publishing them. That's also the reason that they go down to like $7.99, and you can actually get them for a reasonable price. Game for like $6.99.
Yeah, it's crazy. So So if we're looking at like the lineup for the rest of the year, I think July makes sense because they have... So Splatoon is September, right? That's what they've said for it. Because we expected Xenoblade September, Splatoon in like July, but it seems like they swapped those around, probably because Splatoon needed a bit more time to work on. Advance Wars, where the hell is that going to be? I totally forgot about it, but you're right. What are they going to do with Advance Wars? Where do they put it? August, potentially, right? I don't think there's anything major in August that's happening, so that could come out then. It's also wild to me that one person on Twitter, she had Advance Wars open in April, and assuming she just had it since April and just is still able to play it. It's absolutely bizarre. But yeah, that game obviously exists. And, you know, a lot of chat lately about Nintendo just sitting on video games. Like, you know, they just had this done for years and they're just sitting on it. Like there's that story from Fanbyte about the sequel to 1-2 Switch, which is supposedly almost done, but no one likes it, and so they don't know what to do with it, you know? So I don't know, maybe that shows up somewhere in one of these directs at some point. They figure out what to do with it. But if we expect... So we've got Mario & Rabbids in October, Bayonetta potentially October as well. If September is Splatoon, August is Advance Wars. November, we're going to get Pokemon. So we're going to get Scarlet and Violet coming out. And then kind of what room does that leave for other stuff? Is there anything else?
I mean, our predictions and our dream of like what the 3D Mario team is working on is feeling more unlikely that we will see what that game is if it is coming out this year. I think that they can. I think they're still within their power to do a full first party direct and not to mention that, but still have maybe 10 minutes of Breath of the Wild 2 at the end. I don't know.
Yeah. So my other crackpot theory here, Bally, is if you noticed, after the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, they had a Treehouse segment. A Treehouse segment focused on Live Alive. Now, look at that Treehouse segment. It's a very fancy setup. They got people in chairs, they got a whole office thing, they got cameras set up, they got all this thing, the dev kit probably set up to play it. Now, if you ask me, it's a lot of work to do a whole Treehouse section just for this one Live Alive game, right? Which they're not really doing a huge amount with.
I thought they had that studio set up in their Washington offices anyway.
Maybe. Now, you could say that, but you could also say, well, that's a lot of work to do for this one game. So my theory is that they have recorded a few of these, a bunch, you might say, of Treehouse segments that can be deployed at a time when relevant for when other games are coming out or are being announced or being talked about at the same time. So the idea being that they have a Direct in July that also has a bunch of Treehouse stuff to go along with it, kind of doing what their E3 Direct would have been, which is, you know, a bunch of announcements alongside Treehouse stuff to go with it. Now, yes, you could be totally right about it. It just could be their setup at Nintendo, that they have that set up for whenever they need to do Treehouse. You should
compare it to the Treehouse from the previous year. And see how
exactly.
Or not it is.
Yes, totally. But to me, smells a little fishy that just for Live Alive they would have this entire setup to do the Treehouse thing. You know, having people available to go through all the points and talk through the demo and all that stuff. Having people there to talk to about it.
Do we get Treehouse Breath of the Wild 2 in 2022?
That's what I want. That's what I hope, and that's what I dream. And I think that is a reality that is possible that we could be living through. The alternative is that they don't do a summer direct and they do one in September. And the September one, because it's closer to when they're going to do Zelda, they can actually have a bit more to show. I think that is probably contingent on that, right? Like what and when and how do they have to show of that game is probably the biggest deal, because this would be like the chance for them to do the big blowout of what is it fucking called? What do you do? Like, how big is it? What is it based on the old world? What's the structure of the game, right?
How long does that take in a direct to do? I'd say 10, 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, during E3 that year, they basically showed, when they basically did the blowout for Breath of the Wild, Reggie was on camera and he's like, here's the trailer for Zelda. They just showed a trailer and then they went straight into Treehouse stuff, basically.
Right.
So a trailer is good. I think they do another trailer and then they just spend time explaining what's going on with the game and how it's looking. So I think that's probably the likeliest possibility. It gives them a chance to, you know, show off other games as well, right? Like show gameplay for Bayonetta 3, because we've seen like a little bit of footage of it, but showing it in action would be great. And just finding out a bit more about these other games, I think I think with Treehouse stuff would be a good thing to do in around the July period. And it might be like the Live Alive thing where they don't live stream it. They just drop Treehouse videos onto YouTube after the Direct happens. That could very well be what they do, just in this different, because it's not tied to E3, so they're not tied to like doing it over a period of time. They could just be like, anyway, here are the videos, and you can go and watch them and find out a lot more about what we're doing with the games. So yeah, I think that's possible. I think it can happen. But there's no predicting Nintendo, right? Like it is impossible. And especially these last few years with all the changes that have happened and, you know, the lack of physical events and stuff like that. Nintendo feel to me like a creature of habit of like, well, they did it last year in 2021 because the ESA was still involved in E3. And so Nintendo were like, well, we've done stuff with them. We know this relationship. Whereas Keighley is probably a bit more like, well, they probably are a little more reticent because it's a new thing. It's untested. It's untried. It's not something they're used to, which I don't know if that changes, right? You know, if the ESA comes back and does E3 next year, Nintendo might be involved more so because of the ESA than because of any other reason. You know, even if Keighley has an in-person event, I think they just like the safety and the familiarity of, well, they've done this for years, we've done this for years, let's just do the same thing again. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what we're looking at the moment.
Yeah, I also, just having the Nintendo Direct Mini and how it is obviously just kind of third-party obligations to make sure that these games get promoted, it does make you wonder, like, right, so the fact that these are all in their own thing implies that they were gonna do something bigger, that a lot of these announcements would have been, because a lot of these announcements they'd be a lot of the fluff that kind of fills up a 45-minute direct.
Right, there'd be
normally.
like montage stuff in the middle of the major things, yeah.
So for them to be cut out and have a standalone thing does slightly make me want to say either they're doing absolutely nothing for the rest of the year and just doing like, you know, a Splatoon 3 specific direct and that's it, plus a couple of like announcements perhaps about Reboot Camp or Metroid Prime, but it makes me lean more towards they want to do a big long deep dive on a game, and that game is probably Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah,
because that takes up a lot of direct time. If they do here's a trailer and then we're going straight into Treehouse, they might do like 15 minutes of, you know, Metroid Prime, here's Game Boy games on Switch Online, here's Splatoon 3. Like they might do like 15-20 minutes of that, but if you got like a 45-minute direct in say July, August, September, you're gonna get 15-20 minutes of Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah, there is so much still to say. That's the thing that makes me think that they should have one is, well, I always think they should have one because I love Directs, like they're the most interesting, announcements in the industry for me. If we have the Metro Prime remaster, plus more information on Bayonetta 3, plus the name of Breath of the Wild 2 and more information on it, plus when the hell Advance Wars is coming out, and then also talking about Splatoon 3 and what's happening there, even though I think of all these, Splatoon 3 is the one that stands out of like, that will definitely get its own direct. Like, even if they do a regular direct, they will 100% do a Splatoon 3 direct.
They got to talk through new modes and how they work, this
totally.
Kind of thing.
Show off the fashion, the single. We don't know anything about the single player still for Splatoon 3, so they got to talk about that. I want it to happen, and I think it can. And if we close our eyes and we believe in the fairies, Bally, I think Nintendo might do it. But again, it's just like a flip of a coin most of the time. So who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Well, we're recording this on July 3rd, so who knows by next time where we'll be.
I think we've said that for like 6 episodes in a row. Who knows if Nintendo will announce something?
Summer recording sessions, they're trickier.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Bally? We need to revisit our predictions at some point. So Nintendo better make one, because otherwise those will just sit in the ether forever, and no one will get any answers of whether we're right or wrong. So it's got to happen at some point in time. But yeah, I'm still hopeful, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
They could also shadow drop Silksong. That's still an option.
Oh God, yeah. That's the other factor of like, when does the release date for that happen? It probably is tied to Nintendo in some way. Yeah, it does. It feels like this Nintendo Direct Mini was more so than anything contractual obligation, the video, basically, which is like, well, we have all these deals with our third-party partners. We have to announce them at some point. Atlas needs us to tell people that Persona is actually coming to our system, for God's sake. So we have to do it in some form. So let's just do this, and let's just throw, I don't know, Plague Tale cloud version in as well, and all this other bullshit. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo were like, Elden Ring, it's coming to Switch. It's cloud version. Yeah,
there were rumors of Red Dead 2 cloud and stuff coming, like that's still on the cards. Like it's wild. Like
cloud versions are bad.
Finally, what do you think of theories that everything's getting delayed and it's all to tie into some sort of Switch Pro?
Yeah, I mean, it's the endless debate. There was a story, I think, that Grubb was talking about where Nintendo have increased the cost of their production stuff by 3 or 4-fold for the next year, which usually would line up with like making new systems or having a lot more stock, stuff like that. So that could be a route we take of like that's potentially meaning it's going to be a Pro.
I think it's most likely that they release another Switch that has the same power as the current Switches.
It's just like slightly better battery again, or like a smaller one, or a pocketable one.
Well, there you go. Like they finally do like the Switch Jumbo, and it's
the Switch Jumbo.
Switch Jumbo. It's like a massive tablet, and it's still got the same power as the original Switch.
Yeah. The Joy-Cons is just like still the same size. They just like lock onto this like mini section in the middle.
It really struggles with my fixed dress one. Like it breaks my forearm.
Absolutely snap your body in half. That's a nightmare situation. So my thing with that is just don't expect anything and never be disappointed. I think that's the best way to go with it, honestly, because I just don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. Anyway, I think that's going to do us. That's going to close us out for this episode. Thanks, everybody, for listening to us and talking about things, Nintendo and various other stuff. We've got some things to plug and tell you about and all that fun stuff, such as, if you would like to support us, you can go over to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where you can get some bonus episodes and fun things. And we would like to thank some of our supporters, as well as some new patrons who have joined, Bally.
Yes, thank you to our 2 new patrons. They are Jared and Corey. Thank you so much for your support. But also thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and Albert. Thank you all for your support as well. And thank you to all of our other patrons. It's hugely appreciated, the support you give the show.
Absolutely.
To get those bonus episodes.
Yeah, keeps Bally buying nappies all the time. It's a good thing. You gotta fuel that train because it's a big one. Absolutely, really, really appreciate everyone jumping in and supporting the show. And if you want to, you can go over to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife and check out the stuff over there if you're interested. We talk about stuff like Star Wars over there as well, which we're going to talk about Obi-Wan again, and I'm probably going to bundle up our 2 Obi-Wan conversations and put that out on the main feed, because we've done that before where we do Star Wars stuff on the main feed. So look out for that if you're not a patron, and that'll give you a bit of a taste of what we do for some Patreon stuff as well in the future. So yes, obviously you can find the show in various places. We are all over the internet, such as Stitcher. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify, where people have continued to be reviewing us, and that's really great. Seeing that keeping going up is a super nice thing. It's probably the best way for new people to find the show. So if you listen to us on Spotify and haven't reviewed us yet, just head over there and click the button, give us some star ratings, and that would be very nice to see. You can obviously find us on the internet as well, where we ramble about stuff. I'm on Twitter @LordNBZ. Where are you, Bally, on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter @Ballyman91, and I need to tweet some more.
Well, having a child probably precludes you.
It's a lot harder with a child.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm much more a Twitter consumer than I am a Twitterer at the moment. I'd like that to change.
Yeah, you can obviously find the show on Twitter as well @TNL Podcast, where we put out updates on when the show is coming out and all that fun stuff. And you can also get links there to stuff like our Discord community, where people are chatting a bunch about loads of video game things. Xenoblade in particular, that chat is popping off very often. I'm sure that will be very busy when Xenoblade 3 comes out. Obviously you can find our YouTube channel, where we also put the podcast up, and you can go listen there if that is your preferred platform to listen on. I think that's pretty much it. And anything else, Bally? Any fun things?
I mean, I'm just shocked that Xenoblade the Xenoblade channel and Anime Bullshit are two separate channels rather than like the same one. So that's what's confusing me.
Yeah, well, you know, we've got to have another place to talk about like the AI, the Somnium files, and other stuff like that. And we can't
the actual anime.
Yeah, the actual real horny anime bullshit. Yeah, that's where that's happening. Yeah, you know, I do feel like our audience is very kind of Xenoblade centric. So it took a while for me to make that channel, but I think it's probably one of the more popular ones at this point in time.
Definitely,
because yeah, people love that series. It's great, and I look forward to chatting about it and talking about it when it comes out. So we're only a month away, Bally, so a couple of shows time and I'll be there.
We're already in July. How is this possible?
I don't know, man. It's crazy. The world just moves fast. Things keep happening, and things. Yeah, we'll roll on with video games, and we will keep rolling on, talking about them, enjoying them. So, thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another show for you. Until then, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye, folks. The musical interlude used on today's show was A Far Off Isle from Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course, copyright Studio MDHR 2022.